I'm back, everyone. Are we live? Yes, looks like we are live again. Welcome, everyone, all of my followers of darkness, shadow scavengers, and villainy aficionados. Welcome, bienvenue to another good old fashioned live reviews. I'm your host, as always, Laura Shadows, and this time, what better way to return back to my good old channel is to talk about One Piece. And this time, what better way to do it since I've done One Piece the movie the last time, then what better way to continue is with One Piece movie DOS. More precisely, One Piece Clockwork Adventure Island. Or no, sorry, One Piece Clockwork Island Adventure. So, and I mean, but now I will say this: as the movies basically go move forward, basically the story always progresses. I mean, like the overall. I mean, and I will even say this, like just like the One Piece the movie, I would say like even One Piece Clockwork Island Adventure is I would say one of those most underrated One Piece movies that I think like a lot of One Piece fans definitely should give it a chance. But anyway, without any further ado, here I am to do this review about this wondrous One Piece movie. So here we go. So as I mentioned, like a few seconds ago, basically, as the movie, as the basically the One Piece movies move on, the stories kind of get much more bigger and bigger, and also a lot more interesting. As like the first movie basically was a simple treasure hunt. In this particular One Piece movie, the stories kind of gets a little bit more delicious. Let's just put it that way. So basically, if you don't know, the premise of One Piece Clockwork Island adventure is basically very simple. You have the Straw Hats basically enjoying, their vacation on the beach, and then all of a sudden the Going Merry, has been stolen, and they basically went after it, and they meet this like two characters called the Thief Brothers, Boromir and Akisu, and basically they with them they venture to this location known as the Clockwork Island, the location of the legendary diamond clock. You know, so and basically throughout their journey, they also meet their new adversaries, the Trump Pirates, or the Trump Kyodai, or the Trump siblings. I mean, whichever you prefer. So basically, that's the overall story. Now, as I mentioned before, like One Piece the movie had a very simple, straightforward story, which basically was a treasure hunt. This one, however, even though I will admit the story, even in this movie, is very straightforward, very easy to follow, but this time, it is filled up with all sorts of like bits and pieces when it comes to like like certain like twists and revelations, character development, character arcs, interactions, not to mention also new locations and everything. This one, I would say, when it comes to story wise, this movie follows in the good old fashioned footsteps of like One Piece canon, basically. Like from in which in every basically in which like on every single location the Straw Hat Pirates come. Basically, there's a crisis on their hands. They meet new enemies, they meet new people, and then basically everything ends up in a fight in which they liberate the island or this city where basically these villains are kind of like having under their control. And that's so I will definitely say story wise, Clockwork Island I would say is definitely kind of like a little bit of an improvement from the first movie. Even though some people might say, it's very simple, not that special and everything, but I still think like story wise, it's a movie that I think like a lot of One Piece fans, even like just casual like anime watchers, I think will have a good time. But it is definitely for me a step up to when it comes to like story wise, for this movie. Oh, sorry guys, we have a little technical difficulties. I'm sorry. Sorry, guys. Looks like sorry, guys. I accidentally turned off my microphone. Sorry. Won't be. Won't make the same mistake again. Again. Sorry, guys. All right. Where was I? Okay, so basically, yeah, I mean, I mentioned before already, like when they were doing like One Piece the movie, they were trying to play it safe, So now that you saw, and since like the very first movie, it was kind of back in those days, kind of like a overall success. This time, they tried to kind of up their games and everything. Now, when it comes to like, now when it comes to like, now when it comes to like movie wise, when it comes to the overall timeline of the movie, basically, definitely, since we have, Sanji here and everything, and since, in this movie, it's kind of, it was also revealed, the Luffy with a bounty of 30 million berries. It definitely means that we are basically at the end of the East Blue Saga, and kind of like, at the beginning of the Alabasta Saga or Arabasta or the Baroque Works Saga, whichever you prefer, you know. So basically like right at the end of Arlong Park arc, and basically kind of like on our way to the to the Drum Island arc, basically. You know, so I kind of thought it was cool. Like even though like these movies are not canon for like when it comes to like character wise and some like certain like decisions and everything. I really like they're still trying to keep the overall canon timeline. Where basically are those movies set in a way. So I really like that. But basically throughout this movie, it definitely is uh, you know uh, it is definitely like the it's definitely shown that that is basically at the end of East Blue Saga, and then basically right at the beginning of the Baroque Work Saga or Alabasta, whichever you prefer. Now, one of the other things that, of course, if it's like movie wise or canon wise, one of the things that, of course, is one of the most like gigantic jewels of One Piece is, of course, the Straw Hat Pirates. And in this movie, just like in the first one, they shine. Each and every one of them, from like their like from certain like elements, from like character development when it comes to like the overall relationship between each other. And also one of the reasons why I love about this movie is that since the Going Merry was stolen, and basically all their stuff were on board, like for example Sanji's shoes to like Zoro's katanas, and also Usopp's like equipment and everything. Basically, like they had to improvise, throughout the entire movie, all the way near the end, and I really, really like that. I really like, how they try to show basically, like even though they're most like iconic weapons kit, let's put it that way, they're gone. I just love seeing the Straw Hats kind of like, more precisely, Zoro, Sanji, and Usopp kind of like, improvising, when they're fighting like new enemies and everything, and also one of the things I love about this, the Straw Hat Pirates, especially in this movie, one of the things I'll definitely say is Luffy. Like one of the things I love about Luffy, and I mentioned that even when I was doing the first movie, I mentioned that a lot of times. I love when Luffy, in like certain like serious moments, emotional moments, he always like delivers some like words of wisdom, so to speak. Like for example, if you don't risk your life, you cannot create your future. And even though and in, like it was, and again, the overall scenery, the overall moment where he basically said it, it was kind of like you kind of think like it's maybe like a little bit simple, not so much like not so special, not so important. But even still, the way how they used Luffy in that scene was just simply marvelous, absolutely marvelous. And again, and again, not just simply with Luffy, but also like the interactions between each other. Also, like Nami. I would say this: Nami in this movie has a lot of like funny moments in this one, especially with the Trump pirates or the Trump Kyodai, if you prefer. So overall, when it comes to the Straw Hat Pirates, none of them disappoint. None of them disappoint. Like from Luffy to Nami, Sanji, Zoro, Usopp, every single one of them, they deliver. Every single one of them had their time to shine in this movie, which of course, is important. Now, one of the other things, of course, when you have movies, of course, you're going to have new characters, or in this case, you have the Thief Brothers, which of course is Boromir and Akisu. But also, there's the other two characters I would love to put in this one are definitely Okay, I'm trying to get like as spoiler less as possible, but in this occasion, I mean, I can definitely talk about this because, like, seriously, if you can't see this twist right from the get go, I mean, I don't know, maybe like maybe your mind is kind of working a little bit slower than mine, but still. Besides them, you also have Akizu's true parents, basically, and even though, like, and it's just kind of, I mean, it's kind of crazy. Canon or movie wise, there's always a kid involved. I just want to say this: there's always a kid involved. And I will say this: like Akizu and Boromir, like I would say they're pretty cool, cool and interesting characters. Like besides the Straw Hats, and their overall development in this movie, Boromir and Akizo also have like some like cool times, when it comes to like time to shine or like character development. Also like the overall chemistry, between them and everything. I felt like they were pretty much interesting characters. Now, like I said, one of the few characters that we also see in this movie are, of course, Akizu's true parents. Which of course, I would say this, like when it comes to Akizu's origin, it's very classic, very old fashioned, like, the pirate, the enemy attacks a country or a town, and basically, they're trying to save their baby by basically sending it away, and basically, they also show how Akizu and Boromir kind of like, met each other and everything, so overall, like that part of like, Akizu's storyline and everything, it was kind of, it was kind of like, cute, like, again, very classic, very simple, but it was still kind of cute in its own sort of way. Also, like I said, the revelation of like, the Akizu's parents and everything. Again, for me personally, even when I saw the movie for the first time, like I saw this like revelation a mile away. Ever since like Akizu dropped that music box on the floor, and they basically picked it up, and the way how they were looking at each other, like, you can feel like, okay, they're Akizu's parents. So even though there are some twists and turns, but like, and they are kind of like a bit predictable, but like even still, I feel like they work kind of well, So overall, when it comes to new characters wise, every single one of them had their moment. Every single one of them worked, at least for me. When it comes to like, emotional moments or humor or like revelation wise, like I like them for what they were. I like them for sure. Now, one of the other things, and I kind of like went all like, almost like everywhere when it comes to this, but basically when it comes to like, One Piece movies, just like, with One Piece canon, like manga and anime, you're gonna get humor, emotions, and of course action sequences. Now, and this movie, just like the very first one, is filled with like, I would, like humor wise, it's all over the place. Like between the Straw Hats or certain like, jokes or reactions or like, answers, like if it's like, between Akizu and Boromir, or like, if something, when it comes to like Luffy wise or Usopp, like, like humor, they don't get like, seriously, they go all out with the humor in this movie for sure. Now emotions, again, they're not that much in this movie, but unlike the first one, there like the percentage of emotions, I would say it's a little bit higher this time, especially when it comes to involving like, Akizu's character and his parents, especially like, the overall revelation, who they are, and how, and the overall reunion and everything, so definitely there were some emotional moments in that point, as for certain. Now, action sequences. Now, this movie is way more filled with action sequences, unlike the first one. Because this one, because this time, we don't only have like, Luffy fighting the main villain, but also you have the other Straw Hats fighting other members of the of the main villain's crew. Which of course, again, which is one of the reasons why I said that this movie definitely goes throughout, like, the old classic, like traditional fashion way when it comes to, One Piece wise, in canon, manga, and anime, which of course, it's a really, really, really great thing. So overall, like, for me personally, like, so overall, again, the humor for me personally, I think it landed almost everywhere. The overall emotional moments that were in this movie, again, they weren't that much, but I still like them for what they were, especially like the overall parents and Akizu. Like I said, that moment, kind of hit me. Also, the overall relationship between Boromir and Akizu, I thought like also that was kind of like emotional, but in a good way. And again, the action sequences. Now, like I said, there are a lot of action sequences in this movie, but like, or should I say, spread out in this movie. But the biggest package of action sequences is like in the third act, basically in the finale. And again, like with all the One Piece, they do not disappoint, for sure. Now, this kind of brings me to this. Let's talk about the villain's life. Let's talk about the Trump Kyodai or the Trump pirates. Okay, so basically, I will say this. Even though I did mention, like in the first movie, El Drago and Gorash, they were kind of interesting, but with the second movie, they really hyped up the game. This time, like even in which, like, I also mean that even the villains, for me personally, were actually a bit more interesting. Unlike in the first movie. Even though again, every single one of them, they're not just like they're just so they can kind of like feel the plot, basically. To kind of like feel that threat level, basically. They're not just simply there for that. Like every single one of them had their moment to shine, and every single one of them is divided with their own personality and everything. Like none of them, for me personally, felt generic. Let's just put it that way. I mean, like all the way from like Bear King to Honey Queen, Bojack, Pin Joker, and of course Skunk One. I mean, before I go to the main character, of course, the Bear King, I just want to say, like, I really liked his overall crew. Like I said, every single one of them really shine in this movie, and you can definitely, and you can see that every single one of them are different from each other, and each and every one of them had their own personal moments throughout this movie, even though mostly it was when they were fighting the Straw Hats. But out of all of them, I would say when it comes to his own crew, I would say the most interesting one for me was Pin Joker, especially like the overall connection that he had with Zoro, even though personally Zoro never didn't give a shit about Pin Joker, because like he said, look, guy, I don't put like weaklings in my mind. Like when it comes to like weak pieces of shit that I fought in the past, I don't give a shit about them. Like I just simply forget about them like in a second. Like especially like the moment when they kind of like met each other face to face, and he said like Rono Zoro, you gave me that scar, and I'm gonna have my revenge. And then basically Zoro's like, who are you? I love that. I really really like that part. I really did. So I would say outside all of them, like Pink Joker, I would say is definitely the most interesting one. But again, none of them, again, like I said, none of them felt generic. None of them felt like underdeveloped. None of them felt like being there just simply to be there. I like the overall interactions between them, and which kind of leads me to Bear King. The overall main villain of the story. Now, Bear King, again, a lot of One Piece fans would say that he's a very generic villain. Like, for example, he was keeping Clockwork Island under his control for 7 years just because they can build, this massive weapon, King Cannon, for him and everything. So you can kind of already assume, like, even when he was trying to say, like, I'm going to master the seas, I'm going to be the pirate king, like, so you can kind of feel like, that, okay, this guy basically is a power-hungry pirate. Okay, he's a very classic. Some people say generic, power hungry pirate captain. But even still, even Bear King, has his own moments, in this movie. And I really liked the fight between Luffy and Bear King, towards the end. Even like his Devil Fruit, even though again we didn't actually see too much of his Devil Fruit, of the Kachi Kachi no Mi. That kind of makes his body, hard as steel, as he explained it. I mean, the only attack he had was basically the hot boiling special, where basically his hand, turns all red, filled with heat and everything. Like basically like a hot metal, basically, so to speak. And also besides her, also Honey Queen, had a Logia Devil Fruit, and I thought, even though. And it's kind of like this liquid fruit, which is kind of like, basically she transforms her body into kind of like a soapy, liquid or something. So again, even their Delph fruits that were shown in this movie were like, okay, they were interesting. I mean, they were not like cool or badass or awesome. They were, they were fine. They were pretty, they were pretty fine for what they were and everything. But overall, I felt like the villains were entertaining. I liked them for what they were. Again, very simple, very classic. Like there's not too much depth, in them, especially when it comes to Bear King. Like I said, he's a guy who just simply creates this massive weapon just so he can control the seas and become the Pirate King. Again, everything centered around him is all about power. So there you go. So but even still, like I said, they were still like very interesting to me. Now, one of the things I also have to mention, like just a little bit. One of the things I love about One Piece is the locations. All the way, like from like Skypiea, Fishman Island, Thriller Bark, Wano Country, Egghead Island, or even like if we go to like Marineford or Amazon Lilies, Archipelago Sabaudi, like one of the things I love about One Piece are the locations, and I will definitely put Clockwork Island under like one of those locations. They're just simply mesmerizing, iconic, and epic. Because like even though some people might think like it's nothing special about Clockwork Island, for me personally, I liked it. I mean, I'm not talking about just a simple village that is like on top of the island. I'm talking like the design of this island. Like basically this like you have like basically you have this like high like island that is like very very high, humongously high in the sky basically, and it is like kept together through a key. That is basically a clock key. And if and if anything happens to the key, the entire island just simply whoosh gets destroyed. So it's so you can kind of say Clockwork Island is kind of like a cool island, but also at the same time a ticking time bomb. Like if anything happens to the key, everything falls apart. And I like the idea of like that the reason why they made the island so high is because like they can because that way they will be defend themselves against every enemy that tries to invade the overall Clockwork Island. And also I really like the diamond clock in this movie. Even though basically like I said, some people might think like the diamond clock was kind of like the overall center of the story, which when you look at the story, it's not really the center of it, but even though like some moments with the diamond clock, I thought like it was cool, especially towards the end, like when they liberated the island from the Trump pirates, and basically you see the clock like working, and the overall melody that he had, which was also, by the way, like the Akizu's music box, which I thought was great. So overall, Clockwork Island, I would say it's a pretty cool location. Some people might think a little bit too bonkers, a little bit too silly, but for me personally, I really liked Clockwork Island. I really did. Now, one of the other things that, of course, we have to mention, is before I go to my final thoughts, is of course the animation. Even though, like I said, you could definitely feel it was like the beginning of the 2000s when it comes to the overall animation. But even still, like from like certain facial expressions, the movements, the overall fight choreography, the way how it was animated, the locations, even like the movements of the sea, like the animation. The animation wise, they nailed it. Okay, it had a pretty cool animation. So that's also a big plus for me. So overall, when it comes to my final thoughts about One Piece Clockwork Island adventure, again, it has a very simple story. Even though this time, unlike One Piece the movie, it's a little bit more richer. When it comes to story wise. The Straw Hat Pirates, every single one of them was nailed, to perfection. I really like the new characters. I thought the villains were like overall, very entertaining. Even though some people might think like very simple or generic, but I still like them for what they were. I don't think they're villains that you can easily forget. Overall, they've done their work. When it comes to the overall role in the movie. The new Delphers that were revealed in this movie, I thought they were pretty cool. The humor for me kicked all the way to the very end. I love the emotional moments in this movie. The action sequences were actually pretty cool. I liked them for what they were. The overall soundtrack was great. And also one of the other things I also have to mention about this movie is that I love usually I'm not the guy who kind of like talks about the credits, but in this particular occasion, I just love the idea of like which is literally what I said at the beginning, that it marks the end of East Blue Saga and kind of like opens the door to the Works saga, because like when the credits roll, basically it shows you everything that is going to happen in the future, like from like certain locations, certain characters, certain like new crew members, certain characters that will appear like in the near future. Like it was just all of that was shown during when the credits were rolling and everything. So I thought like overall it was kind of cool. So which kind of brings me to the overall rating. Now I gave One Piece the movie, I think I gave it like a 6 out of 10. So I'm giving One Piece Clockwork Island Adventure, I will give him like a solid 6.5 out of 10. The only reason why I added this 0.5 is just because the story wise, the movie was a little bit more interesting. The villains were a little bit more interesting, and of course, the location of Clockwork Island. I really like the idea of this location, and of course, of like a certain like emotional moments that were in this movie. So I think like 6.5 out of 10. I think it's a decent rating for One Piece Movie 2 Clockwork Island Adventure. And with that, we come to an end to another One Piece, or should I say in this case, in general, live review. I hope you guys, have enjoyed it. Again, I do apologize at the beginning, with some like, technical difficulties that I had with my microphone. I do apologize again, so with any further ado, thank you guys for enjoying my new live review I did today. You guys know the drill when it comes to comment, liking, subscribing, give me your own personal thoughts about, if you ever watched One Piece Clockwork Island Adventure, what you thought about the movie, what you thought about the new characters, about the villains, the overall Straw Hat Pirates, everything about, the One Piece Movie 2 in general, everything in the comment section down below. And as always, stay tuned for more. See you guys next time. Lord of Shadows, like always, signing off. See you around, or as I love to say it, later, fuckers.